Imagine Harmony, Oklahoma, a cozy town nestled among endless wheat fields, where summer smelled of cut grass and melons, and autumn painted the maples and oaks in crimson and gold. Main Street was the heart of Harmony, home to small shops with friendly owners, the cozy Aunt Betty's Cafe, always smelling of fresh pastries and filled with heartfelt conversations, and the Rio Theater, where everyone gathered every Friday for a new movie. The school was the pride of Harmony. An old brick building surrounded by sprawling lawns where children played ball after classes. Teachers knew every student by name, and school sports competitions were genuine town celebrations. St. Luke's Church, with its tall spire reaching into the blue sky, was not only a place for worship, but also a center of community life. Charity fairs, senior citizen gatherings, and children's morning programs were held here. Its bell rang every Sunday, calling residents together, reminding them of their unity and faith. Most of Harmony's residents had lived there for generations. They knew each other's stories, sharing joys and sorrows. Farmers, whose families had cultivated this land since the time of the first settlers, took pride in their harvests and fed not only the town but also neighboring counties. Young people, though dreaming of big cities, knew they could always return to the comfort of their native Harmony. Among the residents, the Miller family stood out. Tom and Linda owned a small but thriving farm on the outskirts of town. Their children, 10-year-old Emily and 16-year-old Jake, were active in school life. Emily loved to draw and dreamed of becoming an artist, while Jake was the star of the school soccer team, on whom great hopes were placed. Old Dr. Samuel Johnson, the local doctor, knew all the residents from birth. His office was always open, and his advice was wise and selfless. He was not just a doctor, but also a confidant for many families. In this idyllic world, where peace and harmony reigned, no one could imagine the terrible tragedy that was about to befall their small town. That evening, the sky was unusually ominous. A hot summer day ended in a stifling silence. Far on the horizon, dark clouds appeared, rapidly approaching, carrying an unsettling wind. A storm warning was broadcast on the radio, but in Harmony, people were used to summer thunderstorms, and few paid it much attention. The Miller family was having dinner in their cozy kitchen when suddenly the lights went out. Outside the window, the wind howled, its sound growing louder and more threatening. Tom quickly turned on the backup generator, but the anxiety in his eyes already betrayed a bad premonition. At that time, Emily was drawing in her room, and Jake was watching television in the living room. When the wind began to beat furiously against the windows, Linda cried out in fear. Tom ran to the window and saw in the darkness the gigantic funnel of a tornado heading straight for their farm. "To this cellar! Quick!" he shouted, grabbing the children's hands. They rushed to the door, but it was too late. The impact was instantaneous and devastating. The house trembled as if it were a toy, and then it began to tear apart. Dr. Johnson was just returning home after visiting a patient. On the outskirts of town, he was caught in the terrible storm. He saw debris swirling in the air, trees uprooted, and lightning tearing through the sky. He felt powerless against the fierce elements. In the center of Harmony, at Aunt Betty's Cafe, patrons hurried home as the storm began. Aunt Betty, a kind-hearted woman with gray hair, was closing the doors, hoping everything would pass quickly. But suddenly, there was a deafening roar, and the cafe windows exploded. The tornado swept through Harmony like an enraged beast, destroying everything in its path. In a matter of minutes, the flourishing town was reduced to ruins. Cries of terror mingled with the cracking of wood and metal, and then an eerie silence fell, broken only by the whistling of the wind through the debris. When the storm subsided, a heavy blanket of dust and despair settled on the ground. Those who survived crawled out from under the rubble, crying out the names of their loved ones, trying to find anyone alive in this hell. Harmony ceased to exist as they knew it. Amid the chaos and destruction, as the tornado relentlessly shattered homes, a small 6-year-old girl named Lily found herself trapped beneath the rubble of her destroyed house. Her parents desperately tried to clear the debris, but the heavy beams and bricks wouldn't budge. The girl cried out in pain and fear, her small voice barely audible above the howling wind and splintering wood. Suddenly, as if from nowhere, a stray dog appeared. His fur was matted, his eyes filled with determination. He rushed to the spot where Lily was whimpering and began barking frantically, drawing her parents' attention. Then, he started digging with his paws at the smaller pieces of debris, as if understanding that every second counted. Lily's parents, seeing the dog, redoubled their efforts. They cleared enough space to see their trapped child. The dog continued to bark and circle, preventing them from losing hope. With great difficulty, the parents managed to pull Lily from under the rubble. She was injured, but alive. Her mother held her tightly, weeping with relief. Her father looked gratefully at the dog, who sat calmly nearby, as if having fulfilled his duty. When the tornado finally passed, the dog disappeared as suddenly as he had appeared. Lily's parents searched for him, wanting to thank their unexpected rescuer, but he seemed to have vanished into thin air. This story quickly spread through the wounded town. The tale of the nameless dog who saved a child during the horrific storm became the first glimmer of hope in the darkness of despair. People began to speak of him as a guardian angel in canine form. It was after this event, when Wanderer appeared in Harmony after the disaster, that he began to be seen not just as a homeless animal, but as a special being carrying some unknown, yet important mission of healing and uniting the community. His quiet presence seemed to confirm that even in the darkest times, kindness and compassion can come from the most unexpected places. Now, Wanderer's appearance in Harmony took on even greater significance. He didn't just wander into a struggling town, but seemed to return to the place where he had already performed his heroic deed, to continue his invisible work of healing and uniting the community. The first days after the tornado were filled with chaos and grief. Rescuers arrived from neighboring towns, clearing debris and searching for survivors. Volunteers brought food, water, blankets, and medicine. But nothing could fill the void that had formed in the hearts of those who had lost their loved ones and homes. Linda Miller miraculously survived, but her body was covered in bruises and cuts. She wandered through the ruins of their farm like a ghost, silently searching for her children and husband. Her eyes were empty, and her face held an expression of unspeakable grief. Dr. Johnson, though injured himself, tirelessly provided first aid to the wounded. His face was tired and saddened, but his hands continued to heal, and his words, to support. He had seen so much pain and loss that his own grief seemed insignificant compared to the suffering of others. Aunt Betty lost her cafe, but she didn't lose her optimism. She organized a temporary kitchen on the street and fed everyone who needed food with her signature pies and coffee, trying to somehow warm their frozen souls. But despite all the help and support, a heavy atmosphere of apathy hung over Harmony. People were too traumatized, too broken to think about the future. Their conversations revolved around memories of the past and mourning their losses. Hope seemed distant and unreal. It was at this time, amidst the ruins and despair, that Wanderer appeared. He seemed to materialize out of nowhere, quiet and inconspicuous, but with an unyielding spark of life in his wise eyes. His journey to Harmony marked the beginning of a new chapter in the history of this fallen town. Emily, as before, lived in her surviving cottage on the outskirts of Harmony, but now her loneliness was even more acute. Memories of her late husband, John, became even more vivid against the backdrop of the general devastation, as if the world around her emphasized her personal loss. She rarely left the house, lost in her thoughts and memories. One early morning, as the sun was just beginning to paint the sky with soft pink hues, Emily went out onto her porch with her morning cup of coffee. The air was cool and damp after the night dew. She sat in her old rocking chair, inhaling the fresh air, when suddenly she noticed him. By her doorstep, peacefully curled up, lay a stray dog. His fur was dirty and matted, but in his eyes shone a quiet wisdom. Emily immediately recognized him. It was the same dog that had been talked about in town for several days, the one who had saved little Lily from under the rubble. News of his heroism had reached her through brief conversations with volunteers who occasionally brought her supplies. She imagined this brave animal who had unhesitatingly rushed to the aid of a child. Now he lay by her doorstep, tired and homeless. Emily felt an unexpected surge of compassion. Leaving her coffee on the table, she slowly got up and cautiously approached the dog. He raised his head, looking intently at her with his deep, intelligent eyes. There was no fear or aggression in his gaze, only a quiet alertness. "Hello, boy," Emily said in a soft voice, reaching out her hand to him. The dog hesitated for a few seconds, then gently licked her fingers. His tongue was warm and rough. Emily felt something in her frozen heart begin to thaw. This small gesture of trust from a homeless animal seemed so significant after everything she had been through. She crouched down and gently stroked his head. His fur was coarse and dusty, but under her palm, she felt the warmth of his body. She didn't know why, but this dog evoked special feelings in her. Perhaps it was his calm gaze, which reminded her of the quiet strength of her late husband. Or perhaps it was simply a sense of shared loneliness, two beings who had experienced loss and were now seeking some solace in this ruined world. Emily returned to the porch and brought the dog a bowl of water and the leftovers from her breakfast, a piece of omelet and a few slices of bread. The dog cautiously ate and drank, occasionally glancing at her. Then he simply lay down at her feet, basking in the morning sun, his presence seeming so natural, as if he had always been there. From that day on, Wanderer, the name somehow arose in her mind, became her constant companion. He waited for her on the porch every morning, accompanied her during her infrequent walks around the house, and lay quietly by her chair in the evenings as she read her old Bible. He never imposed himself, but was always there, his silent support becoming a true salvation for Emily in her loneliness. Through Wanderer, Emily began to communicate with people again. Neighbors who knew about her new companion occasionally stopped by to visit her and the dog. They told her the latest news about the town's recovery, sharing their own stories of loss and hope. Wanderer became a kind of bridge between Emily and the rest of the community, bringing her back to life after a long period of self-isolation. His heroic act during the tornado made him special in the eyes of Harmony's residents. Now, seeing him next to Emily, they felt even greater respect for this homeless animal. He was not just a dog, he was a symbol of courage, compassion, and unexpected hope that had appeared in their devastated world. The children of Harmony experienced the tornado particularly acutely. They lost not only their homes and toys, but also the sense of security and carefree joy that had been an integral part of their childhood. The school, once a bustling place of meetings and learning, was now a partially destroyed building where temporary classes were held in surviving rooms or outdoors. However, it was the children who first felt a special affection for Wanderer. They saw in him not just a homeless dog, but a friend who seemed to understand their sadness and anxiety without words. His calm presence near the ruins of their school, his quiet games in the vacant lots where their homes once stood, had a soothing effect on them. Little Lily, saved by Wanderer during the tornado, felt a special bond with the dog. Every time she saw him, her eyes shone with gratitude. She often brought him her favorite toys, shared her cookies with him, and told him about her childish worries. Wanderer patiently listened to her, resting his head on her lap, his quiet whimper sounding like sympathy. Other children were also drawn to Wanderer. They gathered around him, stroked his matted fur, and told him their stories about lost homes and friends. The dog never ran away. He accepted their love and attention with quiet dignity. His games with them were calm but sincere. He brought them found sticks, allowed them to pet him, and ran alongside them as they explored the ruins, as if protecting them from danger. It was the children who first proposed giving Wanderer a permanent home. One day, sitting around the dog near the half-destroyed school, 8-year-old Michael said, "Why does he always have to be homeless? He's a hero." His words resonated in the hearts of the other children. They began to discuss the idea, filled with enthusiasm. They decided to collect the pocket money they received and also ask adults for help. Inspired by their common goal, the children went around the surviving houses, telling Wanderer's story and collecting donations. Their sincerity and persistence touched many adults who also felt gratitude towards the dog. With the collected money and the help of several volunteers, they built a small but sturdy doghouse, which they placed near the schoolyard. They agreed to create a schedule so that everyone could take turns caring for Wanderer, feeding him, walking him, and simply spending time with him. This joint project became something more for the children of Harmony than just building a doghouse. It was their first step towards restoring a sense of community and responsibility after the tragedy they had experienced. Working together, they again felt part of something bigger, again learned to cooperate and care for one another. Wanderer accepted their care with quiet gratitude. He quickly got used to his new home and his little caretakers. His presence became an integral part of school life, reminding the children of the power of kindness and compassion, even in the most difficult times. Before the tornado, Mr. Jones was the heart of Harmony's main street. His bakery, Jones' Sweet Haven, was famous throughout the county for its fresh bread, aromatic cinnamon rolls, and incredible fruit pies. Every morning in town began with the scent of his baking wafting through the streets, creating a feeling of comfort and well-being. Mr. Jones knew all his regular customers, took an interest in their lives, and always had a kind word for everyone. The tornado spared neither Jones' Sweet Haven. Only ruins remained of the beloved bakery, covered in bricks and twisted metal. Mr. Jones, miraculously surviving, stood among these debris, feeling as if a significant part of his life had been destroyed along with his business. He lost not only his source of income, but also the meaning of his daily existence, the joy he found in the process of baking and communicating with people. After the disaster, Mr. Jones became withdrawn. He rarely left his partially surviving house, lost in memories of the past and mourning his loss. The aroma of fresh baking, which had once filled everything around, was now replaced by the smell of dust and destruction, which only intensified his pain. One day, wandering among the ruins of his bakery, he noticed Wanderer. The dog sat calmly nearby, watching him with his wise eyes. Mr. Jones, usually not too attentive to stray animals, this time somehow lingered on him. There was something about this dog that was captivating: resilience, calmness, and a quiet dignity. For several days in a row, Mr. Jones saw Wanderer near the ruins of his bakery. The dog never approached, never begged for food. He was just there, a silent witness to his grief. And one morning, the old baker couldn't bear it any longer. He went into his half-destroyed house and found a stale piece of bread that had miraculously survived. Coming out, he offered it to Wanderer. The dog cautiously took the bread and ate it, thanking him only with a fleeting glance. From that day on, this became their daily ritual. Mr. Jones brought Wanderer leftovers, and the dog simply sat nearby, keeping him company in his solitude among the ruins of the past. Gradually, a special, nonverbal connection arose between the old baker and the stray dog. Wanderer became a kind of listener for Mr. Jones, to whom he could silently pour out his pain and memories. The dog's presence reminded him of the need to move on, that life continues even amidst the ruins. One morning, Mr. Jones brought Wanderer not stale bread, but a fresh cinnamon roll that he had tried to bake in his damaged oven. The aroma of fresh pastries filled the air around the bakery ruins for the first time in a long time. Wanderer carefully took the roll and ate it with visible pleasure. This small act became a symbol of revival not only for Mr. Jones, but for the entire town. The scent of fresh baking, which had returned to Harmony thanks to a stray dog, reminded people of their past, of the times when their lives were peaceful and comfortable, and instilled hope that it would one day return. Mr. Jones began to leave his house more often, talking to other residents, sharing his plans for rebuilding the bakery. His inspiration, partly awakened by Wanderer's presence, was contagious. People saw that even after such terrible losses, they could find the strength to move forward. Wanderer became not only his companion, but also a kind of inspiration. Looking at the resilience of this homeless dog, his ability to find joy in small things, Mr. Jones began to understand that true strength lies not in material possessions but in spirit, in the ability not to give up even in the most difficult times. Later, when the community began discussing plans for rebuilding the town, Mr. Jones was one of the first to offer his help. He shared his ideas for rebuilding the bakery, which, in his opinion, should once again become the heart of Harmony's main street. And beside him was always Wanderer, a quiet and loyal companion who by his example reminded everyone of the importance of hope and resilience. Among those whose lives were forever changed by the tornado was a young mother named Sarah. She lost her little boy, 5-year-old Tommy, who loved playing in the park near their home. After the tragedy, Sarah retreated into herself, her world shrinking to the walls of her half-destroyed house, filled only with painful memories. She barely spoke, the light gone from her eyes, her heart seemingly frozen forever. One day, wandering aimlessly through the ruins of the former park, Sarah saw Wanderer. The dog sat by a fallen swing set, the very one Tommy loved to play on. Something in the dog's calm posture, in his sad but knowing eyes, caught Sarah's attention. She approached and knelt down, never taking her gaze off him. Wanderer didn't run. He simply looked at Sarah, as if understanding her unspoken pain. Suddenly, the dog cautiously approached her and rested his head on her lap. Sarah involuntarily stroked his matted fur, and unexpectedly, she broke down in tears. These were the first tears she had shed since her son's death, tears of grief, but also of a certain relief that her pain had finally found an outlet. From that day on, Wanderer often came to Sarah. He kept her silent company in her solitude, lying beside her as she stared at the empty swing or accompanying her on her quiet walks through the ravaged town. His presence couldn't replace her lost son, but it gave Sarah the feeling that she wasn't alone in her grief, that there was someone nearby who understood her without words. Over time, thanks to this quiet support, a tiny spark of hope began to appear in Sarah's heart. She started talking to other residents again, sharing her memories of Tommy and finding solace in their sympathy. Another story involves a firefighter named David. During the tornado, he heroically rescued people from the rubble, risking his own life. But he couldn't save his best friend, who died in a destroyed house. Feelings of guilt and helplessness haunted David, and he became withdrawn and isolated. One day, while clearing debris at his friend's house, David saw Wanderer sniffing around the wreckage. Suddenly, the dog began to bark frantically and dig at the ground. David approached and saw that the dog had found an old, damaged photograph. In it, David and his friend stood smiling side by side. This discovery deeply affected David. It seemed as if the dog somehow sensed his pain and brought him this last memory of his friend. David knelt down and hugged Wanderer, for the first time in a long time feeling not only the pain of loss, but also gratitude for this unexpected display of compassion. After this incident, David began to communicate more often with other rescuers and volunteers, sharing his experiences and finding support in their understanding. Wanderer's story spread through Harmony, uniting people in their shared grief and giving birth to new hope. He was seen everywhere, keeping lonely elderly people company, playing with children, supporting those who had lost loved ones. His quiet presence became a symbol of resilience and the capacity for empathy that seemed to have been dormant in the hearts of Harmony's residents after the tragedy. Every resident who had a special connection with Wanderer felt that the dog had come into their lives for a reason. He seemed to sense their pain and their need for support, offering his selfless love and loyalty. He wasn't there during the disaster, except for Lily's rescue. But his appearance afterward became a timely healing factor for the wounded community. As the first anniversary of the tornado approached, Harmony began preparing for memorial events. The atmosphere in the town was still tense, but there was a growing sense of not just sorrow, but also a determination to move forward. The initiative to rebuild the town, which had begun at that fateful meeting near the ruined town hall, was gaining momentum. Mr. Jones had almost rebuilt his bakery, and the aroma of fresh bread once again began to drift through the streets of Harmony. Children cared for Wanderer in his doghouse near the school, which was also gradually being rebuilt. Emily began to paint again, finding inspiration in the landscapes of the renewed town and in the image of her loyal companion. Sarah, thanks to the support of Wanderer and other residents, began to participate in community events, finding solace in connecting with those who had also experienced loss. David became an active member of the fire department again, his resolve and dedication strengthened after what he had been through. Wanderer became more than just a part of Harmony. He became its soul, a living reminder that even after the most terrible tragedy, love, compassion, and unity can revive life and fill it with new meaning. His story, the story of a stray dog who brought hope to a devastated town, remained forever in the hearts of Harmony's residents as a symbol of their resilience and strength of spirit. Exactly 1 year after that horrific day, the sky over Harmony was remarkably clear and calm. The sun gently warmed the earth, where the first signs of full recovery had already appeared. Where ruins once stood, the foundations of new houses were now visible, and some were even rising towards the sky with their fresh walls. Main Street was coming alive again, renovated shops had opened, and the intoxicating aroma of fresh baking once again wafted from the windows of Jones' Sweet Haven. The residents of Harmony gathered at the rebuilt St. Luke's Church for a memorial service. The atmosphere was filled with quiet sorrow, but at the same time, a strong unity and unwavering faith in the future could be felt. The voices of the pastors reading prayers for the deceased mingled with the sobs of those who had lost loved ones. After the service, the community moved to the memorial erected at the site of the ruined town hall. It was a simple stone stele with the engraved names of all who had died in the tornado. People laid flowers at its base, lit candles, and shared memories of those who were no longer with them. Among those present was Linda Miller, holding the hand of her rescued daughter, Emily. Beside them stood Jake, who had returned to Harmony to support his mother and sister. Their faces bore the mark of the grief they had endured, but in their eyes, hope for a new life had already appeared. Sarah stood a little apart, but no longer alone. Beside her sat Wanderer calmly, his loyal presence an inexhaustible source of comfort for her. She gently stroked his head, feeling his warmth and silent support. Mr. Jones, dressed in his best suit, stood at the entrance to his rebuilt bakery, handing out fresh rolls to everyone who passed by. The aroma of his baking once again filled the air of Harmony, becoming a symbol of the return to life and the renewal of traditions. The children of Harmony, who had grown so fond of Wanderer, stayed together, their faces serious and focused. They laid a wreath of wildflowers, which they had gathered themselves, at the memorial. Their care for Wanderer had taught them compassion and responsibility, making them stronger and more united. When the moment of silence arrived, all the residents of Harmony bowed their heads in memory of the deceased. In this silence, each person recalled their personal pain and loss. But at the same time, everyone felt that invisible thread that strongly connected them to one another, shared grief, shared struggle, and shared hope for the future. After the moment of silence, old Jacob, the farmer who had first spoken about Wanderer's understanding, stepped forward. His voice was hoarse from years lived and grief endured, but in it sounded a firm faith. "A year ago, we lost so much. We lost our loved ones, our homes, our past. It seemed that our town would disappear from the face of the earth forever. But we endured. We endured thanks to our unity, thanks to the support of friends and strangers, and thanks to one special guest. Jacob turned and looked at Wanderer, who lay calmly at little Lily's feet. This stray dog wandered into our lives during our darkest hour. He didn't speak with words, but his presence, his compassion, his unwavering spirit became a true inspiration for us. He reminded us of the importance of kindness, the power of hope, and that even in the darkest of times, life goes on. Jacob's words resonated deeply in the hearts of everyone present. They looked at Wanderer no longer just as a stray animal, but as a guardian angel who had been sent to them in their time of need. His story became an integral part of Harmony's history, a symbol of their resilience and ability to rebuild. After the memorial events, the residents of Harmony did not disperse. They stayed together, talking, hugging, supporting one another. They felt that they had become even closer after the tragedy they had endured, and Wanderer became an invisible but palpable bond between them. No one ever found out where this special dog came from or why Harmony became his refuge. Perhaps it will remain a mystery. But one thing was certain: Wanderer left his unforgettable mark on the hearts of the residents of this small American town, forever changing their lives and giving them new hope for the future. Harmony's story became not only a story of loss and recovery, but also a touching tale of how the selfless love and unwavering spirit of one stray animal were able to reunite the broken heart of a community.